I'm going to call to order this July 26th meeting of the Board of Commissioners. Let's rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sarah, will you please read the roll call?
Johnson?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gorflet? Here. Mayor?
Here.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Klaus?
Here.
And I show Crawford excused.
It's time for first public comment.
No
I'm sorry.
objection.
Let me back up. The minutes. If there's no changes to the minutes, they'll stand approved. Anybody have changes?
I'll motion to accept the minutes.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Now, it's time for first public comment. Sarah, will you?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Is there anyone out there who'd like to make public comment? Step on up.
Chris Maxbauer, 503 West 8th Street. I've been taking a look at some information regarding your new county administrator. And I do have a few concerns which maybe you have addressed and I'm unaware of. But the employees that embezzled $430,000 from under Mr. Tungate's nose, nobody asked any questions about that. Nobody asked any questions that I'm aware of. What procedures were not in place that should have been in place. I think something like that is extremely important for taxpayers and residents to know that you're aware of, and that Mr. Tungate, whatever he has done to correct that situation, that should be made public as well. The other concern I have is the fact that, and I don't know exactly what the details were, that he hired contractors without contracts, which called into question invoices that were submitted to his municipality. And I think those questions should be answered. I know many of you were more concerned, at least it was my impression, you were more concerned whether or not Mr. Tungate was willing to pension bond. And I would call your attention to the great state and our neighbor of Illinois and ask them how well that's working for them. I would like you to address the 2 issues with the proposed county administrator that I've raised, and I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Jerry Delbeck, 18307 Mission Road, Traverse City, Peninsula Township. I'm currently the president of the Grand Traverse Astronomical Society, and the observatory sits adjacent to the 37.5 acres at the corner of Brimley and Keystone Road that's back on the agenda tonight for possible sale of that piece of property. And I just want to remind everybody once again that the observatory has been there for a little over 35 years, and it's been a wonderful asset for the community as well for the college. Over 200,000 visitors have come to the observatory, and thousands of NFC students have utilized the facility. So the adjacent property, a sale for that, we may be looking at a short-term, very minuscule monetary gain for a potential long-term detrimental effect to a great asset for this community. I want to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Kurt Sanford. I'm a Leelanau County resident, but current board president of the Greenspire School in Traverse City. I'm here to talk about the same parcel. And I'm here for two reasons, and I'll be brief. First is because I believe in the park, the county park that's there, and the wonderful things it's now done for two generations of my children playing soccer and recreation down there. And I'm supporting T-Bays and everything it does to help keep the park up, and the county for keeping it a public recreational facility. Back when I was on the T-Bays board about 18 years ago, it was my first round of children, we discussed that parcel and everybody walked it. And the hope was that we could have a recreational facility indoor adjacent to that. And this is kind of like the Minervini group in the Grand Traverse Commons. Many people have come through and looked at it and just haven't had the right fit yet. The same thing happened with the Grand Traverse Commons, where the Greenspire School is now based. Everybody said no until Ray Minervini came in, and look what we've done. We've built a nice village there. And I think the same thing can happen with partnering not-for-profits and perhaps some private usage in that parcel and keep it pristine in lots of ways. Something has to happen to it. It's been 20 years that I've walked it numerous times. So I'm in support of T-Bays for using the property to the south of it, and I thank the county for making it available for many years for my children. It's an asset to the community, and it's an asset for people to come to town and look at the soccer fields. I've refereed there, I've been coaches there, and all I hear is it's a great facility. We love the town. It brings people, it brings business in, that I think its value is much greater than just the value of the park itself, because people from out of town come to that park. In terms of the Greenspire School as board president, we are chartered by TCAPS, and TCAPS, it's now we're in our 6th year and our 15th year of existence, and I've been board president for 13 years. Our charter, and it is initially wrote with TCAPS, is that we would have a high school, and we've been now in the position 6 years in to look for a small project-based environmental high school to complement our middle school of 6th, 7th, and 8th on the Grand Traverse Commons. There's no room for expansion there, so we're looking at other sites. Our environmental school basically needs to be close to environmental studies programs, and the Boardman Valley is perfect for it. So we could utilize a small percentage of this, work with something like T-Bays, work with the college, and continue our program in the future. And we're now to the point as a board that we want to explore options, and this is the best parcel we found so far. So I would encourage you to ask yourselves, and perhaps the Parks and Recreation Division, to look at partnerships with us, and I think we can find some fits that work. Some of it may be private, some of it may be charitable organizations like T-Bays, but I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Jessie Kempf, 1820 Oak Hollow Drive. I am the Director of Administration for T-Bays. I am just here to speak also on behalf of the property adjacent to the Keystone Soccer Complex. We are currently managing that 75 acres. We use the facility to operate about 2,000 kids to play soccer there. In addition, we have partnered with rugby, ultimate frisbee, lacrosse. There's been various other sports that have come through and used that facility, and we enjoy partnering with them and trying to make a diverse range of programming. In addition, we bring in about 7,000 visitors every year for our 2 tournaments that we hold, one in May and one in September. They generate about 3,000 hotel night stays in the Traverse City area. With that parcel adjacent to ours, it would be, obviously a great addition to our complex, but we also want to support any other development on that site that would potentially benefit not only our organization, but benefit recreation and other nonprofit organizations within the Grand Traverse region. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Andy? Okay. All right. With that, we'll move on to the agenda. is, does anyone have anything they'd like to add or change on the agenda? I would like to add Eric Tungate for discussion under new business.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we accept the agenda as is with the addition of Eric Tungate under new business.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On to the consent calendar. Sarah?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive and file. 1, Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency minutes of May 18th, 2017. 2, Northwestern Regional Airport Commission minutes of May 23rd, 2017. 3, Department of Health and Human Services minutes of May 26, 2017. 4, Northwestern Regional Airport Commission minutes of June 13, 2017. 5, Northern Lakes Community Mental Health minutes of June 15, 2017. 6, support to maintain the required funding of the Michigan State University Research Station located in Leelanau County to assist with the eradication of the spotted wing Drosophila, Antrim County. 7, Resolution 2017-01, strongly advise against sale of the Grand Traverse Pavilions by the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners, received from Grand Traverse Pavilions Foundation Board. 8, Road Commission Report, July 2017. 9, Conservation District Report, June 2017. 10, Grand Traverse County Staff Report for July 2017. 11, Budget to Actual Revenue and Expenditure Report. B, Approvals. 1, Deputy Medical Examiner Appointment. 2, Fiscal Year 2017 Budget Amendments. 3, June 2017 Claim Approvals. 4, Fiscal Year 2018 Annual Implementation Plan of the Area Agency on Aging.
Does any commissioner want to have anything removed from the consent calendar? Yes.
Number 3, number 8, number 10, and under approvals, number 3.
3, 8, and 10.
And number 3 under approvals.
All right. Anybody else? I would like to remove A7. Any staff would like anything removed? We've pretty much got everything.
Yeah, we wouldn't be anything left, so that's fine.
Anybody from the public like anything removed from the consent calendar? Could I get a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent calendar with the deletion of items A3, A7, A8, A10, and B10.
Support.
B3?
Was that 3? B3?
A3, I'm sorry, B3.
Okay.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's no special order of business. Brings us to items removed from the consent calendar. Cheryl?
Okay, number 3, the DHS report. I'm looking at page 19 of your packet, under the financial report regarding the pavilions. And there's a statement in here that says, the social accountability was reviewed for April 2017, which totaled 1.442.165 million in uncompensated care and services year-to-date provided by the pavilions, and I'm wondering what that is. What is $1.5 million in uncompensated care?
Please.
Corey Hansen, CEO Administrator at Grand Traverse Pavilions. That's a report that we include into our financials each month. Basically, it's the difference between the charges for services and our reimbursement from like Medicaid and Medicare that is written off as uncollectible or unreimbursed care.
So we had $1.5 million in uncollectible or unreimbursable care.
That's a year-to-date number. Yeah, it's about $4.5 million annually.
That we just write off.
Right. So, I mean, that's a typical healthcare type situation.
Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That was all I needed on that.
Okay.
Is that easy?
That was, I guess, in going in
Do these
order.
one at a time?
I
Sure.
think he's number 7,
Well,
and he beats me.
We should.
We should vote to pass
to-
or accept, receive, and file the A3. So we make that motion.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that takes me to 7. Resolution 2017-01. Strongly advise against the sale of the pavilions. I've got some concerns and questions regarding that. With the pavilions, it was built with the taxpayers' dollars. And it was, I believe that millage ran from 1995 through 2015. Generated excess of $26 million. We provide, I believe we provide care to people other than just Grand Traverse County. The question I have is, we have a VA that is based here and supported by Benzie County and Leelanau County. They help support the VA because they use it. We once had a health department that was a tri-county, which was supported by Benzie County, Leelanau County. We have a court system that as well is shared by other counties. We have a pavilions that we built, and I'm not for certain, other than some of my extended family has been there, that has not been county residents. I'm sure we take residents from other counties. There should be something to be gained from having other counties' residents be in our pavilions. That's never been brought up, as far as I know. So that's one of my issues with the pavilions. And a couple other things I would want to note is the information that we received from Corey from my request back on June 6th. We received compensation notices or employee, a director's report for 4 employees that answered to Mr. Hanson. And their total salary for the 4 is, and this is just a salary, it's just shy of $439,000. There's one individual, and I won't mention names, but hired in 2017, the end of January. She's on the books or on the information that Corey provided us to receive $12,992 in bonus, I'm assuming for this year. I've always, yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but all we have before us right now is to approve a resolution that they approved.
Right.
I don't know if we need to get into all this other detail, which is either we support this resolution or we don't support it.
It's not a support, it's a receive and file.
Yes, so
Right, it just says receive and file, and I just wanted to bring this up because it's just, and I'm in favor of receiving, and filing that motion, but yes, Sonny.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we receive and file the motion from the Pavilion Foundation requesting that the county board not sell the pavilion's property.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Going on to the next, Cheryl.
Okay, the Road Commission report. I see that we have our person here. If you wouldn't mind coming up. My question is from your report, and this is on page 32 of your packet, if you're following along. Number 10 of your report talks about use of healthcare trust fund assets. And I'm sure all of you read that and were probably as equally intrigued as I was, because it says, as the retiree healthcare policy has been amended, the need for the trust no longer exists. The board will begin drawing funds to cover the retiree health costs currently being incurred, which will eventually be eliminated. Current employees receive a monthly payment to a health care savings plan. No costs will be incurred for current employees after employment is terminated. So how did you do that? That's my question.
Okay, Jim Cook, Grand Traverse County Road Commission. Well, a few years back, unfunded liabilities became a big concern, as well as the OPEB liabilities. And so our board asked me to look at a way to eliminate our OPEB. And so what I did is I did some research. I talked to other road commissions. I looked at other municipalities, and I discovered that MERS offers a healthcare savings program. And it's fairly recent. I want to say it's maybe only a couple, 2 or 3 years old. And so first off, healthcare, retiree healthcare, it's not guaranteed by law. It's not, it's not required by law. So we had a policy, and with I want to say it was either 30 or 60 days notice, we could revise the policy and eliminate employee retiree health care insurance. But in order to be fair to the employees, what we did is we worked with MERS to find out, our board could have made that decision, just eliminate retiree health care insurance. But we had talked with MERS, and what a lot of municipalities have done is they established a health care savings program and a health care savings program account for each employee or past employee.
Is that like an HSA?
It's
Basically
say,
an HSA.
Yes.
yeah, I would say it's similar. So basically, it's a really nice benefit, actually, because employees, there's a conversion. We did a conversion, so we could have just said, hey, the employees are going to start now. Or maybe, to be fair, what we could do is we could put an amount of money into each employee's healthcare savings program account. And so, again, we did a lot of research. Our board determined that they would put in $95 a month for every month of service for a current employee. So if you can imagine, somebody that's been at the Road Commission, we had employees that had about 30 years of history with us. And so they received quite a large amount of money into their healthcare savings program account.
And I would say the cost to do that conversion was about $500,000. But what that did was, we set up an account. Employees can contribute to that account. There is a requirement. You have to pick an amount. We picked 1%. So employees, in order to have an account, you have to have a 1% employee contribution. But the Road Commission contributes to current employees $80 a month for every month of continued service beyond, I want to say it was May 1st of 2016. In addition to the conversion amount, which was $95 a month for every month of service up to that date. So basically what that does is it puts money into an employee's account, and that employee can take that money
With them.
It's portable. So whenever they leave, whether they leave in 5 years, whether they leave because they retire, whether they leave because they found another job, whatever it is, that triggers an event per the policy or per MERS's program. And so at that point, they can use those funds for any medically related expenses. So co-pays, insurance premiums, medical supplies,
Sure.
and things like that.
And so the beauty of it is that when they retire, there's no cost to you.
That's correct. And then what we did was we also worked with we have two groups of retirees. We have what we call early retirees, those who retired from between the ages of 55 and 65. That's an early retiree. And so we had some people that were already retired, and they're just getting health insurance. And so what our board decided to do was we established a health care savings program account for them. They receive $500 a month in that account. That's right around what we pay for a single employee premium. And what that allowed our retirees, our early retirees, to do is, at first, just like anything else that changes, there was a lot of concern that they're going to lose a benefit. But what a lot of our retirees found was their spouses were working, and they couldn't get insurance through their spouse's insurance because they had employer-provided insurance. So once they no longer had employer-provided insurance, what they could do is they could go on their spouse's insurance policy. They could get their health care insurance for probably half of what we were paying for. And they're allowed, and they just keep banking this money that they're saving on their insurance premiums. And again, they can use it for any health care related expenses. The other thing that we did was we did not change what we call the post-65 retirees. They have a benefit of, I want to say it's $120 or $240 a month, depending on if they have a spouse on their insurance plan. And so we didn't change it for them. So those employees were, what we did is we established a health care savings program account for them. We continue to put money into their account. They can use it any way they want that's medically related. But what that did is that basically took our OPEB liability from about, I want to say $2.5 to $3 million. It initially took it down to about $1.5 million, and that will go away. That will go away in probably definitely in less than 10 years, but probably more like 5 years. So that was just one of the things that we did to eliminate our OPEB liability.
It caught my eye.
This is essentially a buyout, isn't it, really?
I'm not sure I'd call it a buyout. Again, we were eliminating our OPEB liability. We wanted to be fair to the employees, the current employees,
I'm not against
and
it.
retirees.
It seems to me like that's what it is. Do you have any idea how much money it saved you in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it saved us probably $2 million in the long run.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. That was my question.
And then again, our current employees, again, they won't receive retiree health care insurance, but what they'll do is they'll walk away. So ideally, a person that's been there for 20 or 30 years is going to walk away with a nice amount of money in their account that they can use to supplement their insurance needs. So.
And there is a point on their age that HSA account is available to them, not necessarily exactly for medical benefit. I don't remember what the age is because I switched all of my guys to an HSA a year ago.
Dan?
But you must have the money somewhere in your bank account to pay them this this one-time event.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's what we did is, again, we had proceeds from our old facility sale.
Yeah.
And we had contributed more money to our MERS retirement program, as well as this was a one-time, $500,000 cost to establish these accounts. And,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, what you've done is you've eliminated your retiree health care and replaced it with the ESA program.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, it's a healthcare savings program,
Yeah, we should take.
a little different than an HSA.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so then my next one,
Could I get a
Sorry. oh, we got
motion
to
to
support, move to file that.
Support. Second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Cheryl.
Okay,
On to
moving
10.
on to the
Staff report.
staff report. First, on the staff report, it notes the 2017-18 strategic priorities, and I just kind of wanted to note that we still haven't even approved those, so it's nice that they're on there, but it'd be nice if we would approve them at some point in time. Okay, so on page 38, talking about the Retiree Health Care Trust that was voted on, that was a meeting I wasn't at. I just was curious because I believe we had asked the administration to look at attempting to buy out the OPEB of the union people, and we asked the administration to attempt to do what we'd heard some other counties had done, where they tried to make a cash payment rather than having to go to a healthcare trust. And I just was wondering what efforts, if any, were entered into to try and negotiate that buyout.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as Jim would probably relate to, getting the scope of what our current liability is will be one of the first steps that we will have to take, being relatively new here to the county and having 13 bargaining units. Looking back to the actuarial reports and the underlying documentation that we have that clearly identifies which employee groups are currently promised these retiree benefits, so that as we start to value what any potential buyout will be, we have that underlying source data. So we are still actively working on being able to provide that information with the report and some recommendations.
Well, then how do we have an OPEB number if we don't know who gets it?
So 2 years ago, so it was in the summer of 2015, the then finance and HR staff had access to this information that I've now since obtained and reviewed and provided it to an actuarial firm. And they've then,
And
similar
isn't
to
it
any MERS annual valuation.
7 million and something? Isn't that the number we're talking about?
Yes, correct.
7.1.
Yeah, okay, so we know the number. It's 7.1 million, right?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, so that evaluation would have been done with the data at the time. We would have had employee changes since then. It's a snapshot of what would have been our liability at 12/31/2015. It projected again for 12/31/2016 for our financial statements. But we would want, if going to these unions to negotiate, the most up-to-date real number. And we're also then due for our 12/31/2017 financial statements. We're due for another valuation, so it'll all be.
So when do you think you would have all of that information together and be in a position to attempt to negotiate a buyout?
That I would have to coordinate with administration and align with, we're
Well,
also
I
in.
understand there's a lot of things that need to be done, but the point is, we're trying to come up with a solution to this thing, and, you know, you're a big piece of it, so.
Right now, we're in fact-finding. We just completed fact-finding with
completed
5 of the Teamsters units, and so we now are waiting for that fact-finder's report and recommendations to come out. So I would expect, based upon that, we would have some additional discussions with the board in a closed session regarding the negotiation strategy.
Okay, but
From a-
that doesn't, I mean, my question to you is, Joe Blow, who is a union member, has retirement health care benefits right now of X dollars, correct? And so does Sam, and so does Dave, and on and on. And that's how he come up with $7.1 million 2 years ago, right? I mean, there's people tied to those numbers, correct? And they're union members, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand why this is, why you don't go to those unions and say, we want to do a blanket buyout, okay? We're willing to offer 50 cents on the dollar cash money for your retirement health care benefit, because the governor, in the stroke of a pen, could eliminate that completely. I mean, I thought that's what we were talking about.
Well,
Were we not talking about that? Something like that?
Well, something like that's a good compromise, but about 2 years ago, we eliminated some of the long-term benefits that we could. We were at 9.6 and eliminated 2.1 million by going from $350 to $100 a month and those kind of things. But we were having some problems with union negotiations in terms of saying contractually you can't do some of those things. So that was part of the negotiating process. We just completed a fact-finding experience. That was part of the issues of if we could go across the board and deal with those kinds of issues. But I think in terms of getting numbers and buyouts, we hadn't entered into negotiations with retiree benefits in terms of buyouts. We've been focusing on the 6% or the 20% across the board payments in negotiations. We certainly we could do a projection, I suppose.
I would not say that the finance staff could do a projection on that. That's something that we would need to engage an actuarial firm to do, because in order to, for instance, buy out 50 cents on the dollar, we would need to know, well, how many dollars would we associate with that? So if somebody is currently employed and they have been promised a benefit upon retirement, we would have to take into consideration, okay, how many years of service have they worked? Do we want to take that into consideration with our recommendation for the buyout, as the Road Commission did? But all of that playing into one of the key components would be putting a value on, 50 years old, I would potentially work for another 15 years.
Okay, I
and
understand.
then be eligible. So we would need an actuary to do that.
Okay, so when we heard a presentation about how Oakland County or some other county had worked with their employees, and their employees had said, we're willing to take a cash buyout on that because the state could eliminate that, and we'll take the cash, and we'll each take $10,000 and put it in an account and call it a day. Am I supposed to believe that they went through what you're describing, and then they just decided that they would go with $10,000 for everybody across the board?
Yes, I would absolutely believe, and I actually played phone tag with the finance director from Oakland County last week and wasn't able to touch base with her yet to follow up on this very issue, since they had spoken to us about it, that I absolutely do believe that they engaged an actuary to help them assess the scope of their liability to come to a reasonable proposal for those
And was it
employees.
an across-the-board payout? Everybody got the same amount?
I don't know the specifics of their.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then I had a question on page 39, the Commission on Aging report, which was 2 sentences. What efforts have been expended to find a director, and how close are we to having someone?
Yeah, we just completed a recruitment process. Have selected 3 candidates to bring in for interviews next week. The following week after that, I apologize. So we will be interviewing 3 candidates that met the qualifications that we were looking for.
Who's the interview?
It will be myself, Jody Kelly, HR, staff, Lane Messer, and Paula Segala will be sitting in with us.
And what efforts have been expended, and how close are we to the 4-person advisory panel that we were supposed to have to replace the citizen advisory panel?
Yeah, that's a great question. That has been put on hold until we've gotten a director on board. We have not appointed that or brought any applications to the board for that appointment.
Have there been applications?
I believe there was a recruitment that was done. It's been advertised a couple of times. Chris Kramer could provide that information for you.
Okay. So currently, there's no advisory panel at all?
No, there's no director to advise to.
Well, okay, there's you. You're the acting director, correct?
I'm serving in that capacity, yes.
In addition to that role at the Veterans Administration as well?
We have some great staff who do great work and who keep the ship afloat.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes, Tom?
Since Paul Segala was helping us when we didn't have a HR director, we now do have an HR director. I guess I would like information, doesn't have to be right now, but later, about why we have Paula Segala doing this work when we have a HR director. I mean, what's the reason? I don't understand why the HR director can't handle it.
Well, she was involved in the auditing of that, really has a strong base knowledge of that, and the HR director was new and did not. So we felt that with her knowledge of that, she could help us in that one specific function, was just the COA, and that's all she's working on, is helping getting that up to speed and dealing with any issues that might come up, because we do not have a director. But she probably knows as much, if not more than anybody, about that particular one department.
All right, thank you.
Okay, page 47, under Human Resources, 8 employees were hired, with 3 starting in June, 4 in July, and 1 in September. I would personally like to know the positions that people are hired for. I think it would be nice to know where we're putting bodies. There are 8 positions that are currently being recruited, including the county administrator. I'd like to know what the positions are that we're recruiting for. You don't have to tell me right now, but I think everybody probably like to know. Well,
how deep are we going to dig into what the administration and everybody else does here? I mean,
as deep
will
as
we
I
just
need
get
to
rid of everybody
understand-
and let's just do it all?
I would like to know what's going on in the county, Bob. I'd like to know, who did we hire? Did we hire people in the finance department where we're woefully understaffed? Did we hire people in facilities? I'd like to know that. I think that's important information for me to have. So if you don't want it, ignore it. I guess I'll stop there.
We can have HR get that to you.
Great, thanks.
Could I get a motion to approve the staff report?
So moved.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then my last one was under claims approval. I see that $1,000 was paid to Eastwood Construction, and I thought for the record it would be important to talk about what that was for. Jody.
If you will give me a moment, I will be able to pull up the underlying accounts payable reference.
My parking tickets.
Probably. Probably.
So they were for releases and return of sureties to contractors for permits.
Thank you very much. Move to file that, or move to approve that claims approval, those claims approvals.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that takes us to departmental items. Blair Township Water.
Sorry. I'm Cindy Green. I'm Chief Deputy Treasurer. Heidi Sheppy apologizes for not being here this evening. She had a death in the family and a funeral out of town that she had to attend. We're presenting a motion to approve the resolution to approve the revised contract and resolution to authorize the issuance of the refunding bonds for Blair. And John Axe is here to answer any questions.
This particular project is a combination of 2 refunding issues. One of the issues is refunding a bond issue that was issued for the township back in 2007. It's now refundable, and we're saving money on that one. The second issue is refunding a bond issue from, I think it's 2012 or 13, with the Farmers Home Administration. It's a 40-year bond issue, and Farmers Home has a fairly unusual requirement. If you have a water revenue project, you have to keep it separate from the sewer projects, and you're not allowed to combine the utility. In the particular case, this puts the township in a bind where they would have to double or even perhaps triple their water rates because of a shortage in that particular operation. And they would like to, we have plenty of money available. There's plenty in the sewer project, and in addition to that, we have a whole bunch of reserves already set aside for Farmers Home, and which are being invested in practically no good interest rates, as you know. So they asked us to review this. We recommended combining the two systems, and we asked Farmers Home if that would be okay, and they said, well, no. And so we figured it would be easier. Farmers Home was perfectly happy to let us refund their bonds, and so we've done some calculations. The combination of these refundings will, we estimate, save the township about $1 million. So we'd like to ask, and it's been approved by the township and now by the Board of Public Works as well. So we'd like to have the Board of Commissioners approve a resolution to approve the revised contract, because they'll both now be under the county system. The system is still going to be operated by the township. And then the second resolution is to approve the issuance of the refunding bonds.
So move.
I'll second, but I have a question.
All right.
I'm just concerned, I mean, I need to be taught, why are you even asking us? So this is they borrowed the money, right?
Well, no, the township borrowed it originally, but we're now issuing a new county issue to refund the other issue. So there'll be two county bond issues here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Thank you.
By the county selling DPW bonds, there's a significant savings to the citizens of our community rather than the individual townships trying to sell them, particularly when we do large water systems that affect, you know, whether it be the city, the township, Garfield Township, East Bay Township. A lot of those developments intermingle with each other. By the county selling the bonds, there's a savings to taxpayers in this community.
Okay, thank you.
That's true.
Do we need those in two separate motions?
Yes, yeah, we need one on the contract
Yep.
first.
I moved on that,
Okay. Right.
and
And
I
I
think Dan
second, yeah.
supported.
All right.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I would
passes.
move to authorize the issuance of the refunding bonds.
Support.
Discussion?
We need did we get a roll call?
Sarah
We
will
can.
get right on that.
Okay. Roll call, Sarah.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gorflat?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Johnson?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes. Do we need a roll call for the
Now a
first?
motion to issue the refunding bonds.
Support.
Any discussion? Sarah?
Gorflat?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Johnson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus?
Yes. Okay, now we're moving on to the PACE bonding.
Yes. We're suggesting to approve the resolution to approve request to approve resolutions to authorize pavilions to issue PACE bonds as discussed prior. And also,
This is a project that is being done for pavilions, and I think there was a question about, well, how does this all get here? And I believe Heidi Sheppy submitted a memorandum, which she showed me a copy of, kind of explaining. This is complicated because in this particular case, the building authority can build buildings and projects for the county, and the county in turn enters into a contract with the building authority, makes the payments, the building authority does whatever it is and builds it, and then the county makes the payments to the building authority and they pay off the bonds. Sometimes, and in fact when the pavilions was done, the other entity, which is under county control, which is in this case pavilions, enters into a subcontract with the county and they actually make the payments. And that's the way the pavilions project has been financed in the past. In this particular case, Pavilions has formed a nonprofit corporation which will be providing the specific service that is going to be operated in this facility. And that's the reason for another subcontract. And it's complicated. And I think we have a timetable. I've given you a revised timetable which goes over that. And everything has now been approved except for the Pavilions Board will be approving a sublease which will be with the county at their meeting tomorrow. And so what we need tonight is, first of all, an approval of the basic project, which is the contract with the building authority to go ahead with the project to start with. And that's item number one. Then there's a second resolution, which is a resolution approving the sublease between Pavilions and the county. And that's also in here for your approval. And I think that's what we've got. We got, let's see, we got three of them, I guess.
Yeah, there's one.
There's one more. And that's the one, oh, I'm sorry, that's the one that authorizes the public hearing. We have because this is a nonprofit corporation, we have to go through a federal tax public hearing for TEFRA because it's not part of the county itself, it's a nonprofit. And so that you're authorizing a hearing which will have to be held in, I think it's the 16th of August. And there'll be a notice of that published in the next few days. So those are the three items. You just take them up individually.
Do you need roll call votes for those?
Yes, yeah, we will.
Okay, so which one first?
I think we do. I think we had the resolution to approve the plans, cost estimates, and the period of usefulness. That's the basic lease contract. That would be number one.
So moved. Support.
And then for discussion? Oh, yes, Tom.
Mr. Cooney, do you have any questions at all about the authority of these decisions?
We've reviewed the documents that were prepared, and I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
The only comment that I'll make is that this being another Pavilions project, and I'm sure that this is going to be serving out-of-county residents as well. I'm only guessing, is it, Corey? So we're, this piece of property that's already been leased for less than market value is going to be a piece of property that will be, other counties are going to have it and take advantage of it. So we're going to be providing services to out-of-county residents without seeing any funds come to our general fund. Yes, sure.
Are you asking the administration to enter into conversation with neighboring counties to find out whether or not they should be contributing to that?
Well, I don't know who all would be involved in that.
Maybe
but
Corey
that would
can
be-
tell us, do we at the Pavilions provide services to non-county residents? If so, is their rate that those people pay for the same?
Yes, we just have the one rate, and certainly if they're a Medicaid recipient, we can't control that piece of it. But the private pay rate as well is just one rate for whoever. So oftentimes, adult children bring their family up to where they live, so they might even, have been out of town, but they move their family to the Pavilions. So it's, it's not just the surrounding counties, but there's lots of situations that we serve.
Well, I think primarily it's that the county provides basically the only indigent care, if you will, available to seniors in our community, those people that can only afford what they can pay with their Medicaid and Medicare. We are the only method by which those people get the care that they need. And, I think we are very fortunate in the fact that in this community, the county does not contribute any general fund money to provide that services. The Pavilions is on its own. They're paying their own bills, and they're making their own charges. There's very few places that you can find either a medical care facility or a community airport that the county isn't contributing general fund money to. And we're fortunate to have both.
I just make maybe two other comments. One is, because it's centered in Grand Traverse County, it is providing, 50 to maybe up to 100 jobs when it's fully developed. So, I mean, there is the benefit of that other counties would not, have. So it is bringing people and jobs and taxes to our community. And also, the other point is just that the number of residents needed to make it operational, that's why we had to expand beyond Grand Traverse County, just to make the financials work, to have the volume of people to be served to make it viable.
I have a question.
Yes, Dan.
Good. I guess sometimes I feel like we skirt around issues. Does Commissioner Klaus have a point? Are there similarities between the VA charging other counties, the health department at one time being together in charge? Is this a valid point, and if so, should we pursue it?
Doesn't sound like it.
Pardon?
Doesn't sound like it is.
And why not?
Yes, Bob.
Well, I'll use the analogy of our county roads. We have a lot of people using our county roads. Those are paid by, some various taxes. And if you thought it was by usage, then the local residents would pay more in taxes to use those roads than the tourists, which only use it during a certain time. So, I mean, the PACE program is needed here in this county. It does serve a wonderful need that we have. I don't see how any way you could quantify to say, well, if Antrim County brings one person here, we're going to have to pay X amount of dollars. Because, again, it's no general fund dollars. You have your rates that you can charge that are dictated to you. The social fund that, is over $4 million in debt, are in the hole every year. They can deal with that now with the PACE, and I just don't think it's anything that we would have a solution to or even really need to worry about, I don't think.
I'm not asking that, and I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just trying to get informed. He's not just talking about PACE, he's talking about the pavilions in general, okay, and their services. Is that a valid point? Should we look into it? Should we have administration look into it?
We sold bonds to pay for the construction of the new emergency room at Munson Hospital, but anybody and everybody goes through that door. But Grand Traverse County sold those bonds. Our building authority makes the payments, but they're paid for by Munson Hospital.
But that Munson Hospital's not Grand Traverse County property.
Well, no, but it's still a public service. It's a nonprofit organization, no different than the medical care facility.
Which is the PACE program, is that only able to be operated by a county, or could any other nonprofit run that PACE program?
Yeah, PACE can be operated by any government, nonprofit, and just recently even for-profits are allowed to run PACE now.
Okay, so if there was a for-profit entity that wanted to operate there, would we be as quick to turn that piece of property over for $30,000 a year? Yes.
And you probably know more being in that game. I doubt if there's many for-profits that are jumping at the bit to do that, because there's probably not a lot of profit in that. At the end of the day, it's a very dog-eat-dog world, and even Munson will tell you that the money's not there like people think it is in these type of, medical and all this other facilities. So,
and I would add that any facility that's taken Medicare or Medicaid, which there are privately run operations are doing that, that's, and they're using that same method of losing money. If they have, if they're based on $6,000 a month and they're only getting $3,000, that's a $3,000 loss, but that's what they're doing. So to see that, just to see pavilions claim it as a loss that they're doing something that other people are not doing, I don't buy it. Yes, Sonny.
Well, the other piece that, and you mentioned the fact that we're leasing this property for below market rate at $31,000 a year or something like that. But by my calculations, they're also paying another $175,000 a year because they're making $3.5 million worth of improvement to a county-owned piece of property. You know, so as near as I can tell, that $3.5 million of asset improvement is still county property. 20 years from now, we will have a building that's worth $3.5 million more than it was when we leased it. So I take the $3.5 million, I divide that by the 20-year lease, I get another $175,000 a year, add that to the 30, I'm getting $200,000 a year for that piece of property, and that's well above the market price.
Can I call the question?
Sure.
Consider it called.
So.
So we need a roll call vote?
We need a roll call vote.
Mayor?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Johnson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gorfulet?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
The first and the second, we call a question before they do.
The second resolution is approving the sublease, which is going to be leasing this project to the pavilion. from the
So
county.
move.
Support.
Roll, discussion. Roll call, Sarah.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Johnson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gorfulet?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
And the third resolution authorizes the public TEFRA hearing.
So move.
Support.
Discussion.
Sounded a little wimpy there, bud.
Sarah.
Johnson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gorfulet?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Klaus?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron, it's up to you, bud.
Next-
It is, isn't it? I'm just going to sit here. I'm just.
I know, you're just kind of
and just-
dreaming.
Jason's sitting up there with a smug look on his face, you know. Moving on.
Ready. Okay, all right, Jason.
What was up first, the resolution of support?
For support?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. As presented, I'm asking for the board to approve a resolution in support of House Bill 4651 and Senate Bill 400 as drafted. Just in summary, what I've written here was that this, in 2008, they modified the Public Act 32 to work in a state fee to allow for the reoccurring charges that go towards the wireless infrastructure for 911 in the state of Michigan. Part of that is a distribution back to the counties to support the local operations, training fund distribution back to the county. Those both equate to about $240,000 and $20,000 respectively to Grand Traverse County. That state fee is currently assessed at 19 cents. The legislation allows for that to be capped at 25. The SNC recommended legislative amendment would bring that 19 cents up to a 25-cent fee and establish some parity between the prepaid customers and the postpaid customers on the wireless network. What this will do will allow that fund to continue to sustain itself, pay for the wireless infrastructure, and allow those contributions back to the county to continue.
Question.
Question. Cheryl.
So how much more are our cell phone bills going to go up because of this?
For postpaid customers, it would be 6 cents per month, so it'd be 72 cents per year.
You know, I just got to say, it never ends. I mean,
Agreed.
you look at your bill and it just goes on and on, and on, and on. And I guess, I
Agreed.
just wonder, is there any end in sight to when you will have the technology that you feel that you need? Because every year it's, we need more, we need more.
Well,
I know
what we're
it's-
talking
I know
about
it's
here
always
is
changing.
the infrastructure, the network
I
statewide.
understand
So all but just about a dozen counties have signed on to the new Peninsula Fiber Network, EZNet we call it. So it's a redundant, survivable IP-based network that supports all 911 call delivery in the state. What we anticipate is that this 6-cent increase, once this legislation sunsets in 2021, will be able to sustain itself going forward based on the current costs that we see today and the 25-cent assessment
So we just
versus
got
the
four more-
19-cent
we just got 4 more
assessment.
years.
We still have 4 more years.
Okay.
Right. And right now, we're kind of running 2 systems, and the legacy network that we're trying to get away from statewide and nationwide for that matter, ran about $2.5 million of reoccurring costs. The IP network runs about $16 million. So that's where you get the 6 cents, and then the prepaid customers aren't paying their fair share. So we want to revamp the calculations on that so that they contribute fairly.
So move.
Support. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next, Jason.
Second up is the request to effectuate an intergovernmental agreement for a next-gen 911 call handling system, a collaboration between CCE Dispatch Authority and Grand Traverse County with the option to add on remote sites in the region. This is something that's been, we've talked about it years ago, and when we had the surcharge increase, part of that technology upgrade was an enhanced phone system that'll go into that network and provide a more survivable system, right? CCE and Grand Traverse County want to use each other as a backup facility, a physical backup PSAT. Every 911 center in the state has a backup, an alternate. In case you have a compromise or a problem here, it's going to ship those calls somewhere else. We want to mirror the system here in Grand Traverse County to that's in Charlevoix, Sheboygan, and Emmett County, because they have a comparable sized dispatch center, so they can handle their facility, right, can handle a relocation of a dispatch staff from here to there, and they'll be able to sign on as their own username and password, see all their own phones coming in, and then use the radio system as they see it today.
And cost is what?
Pardon me?
Cost is what?
This has already been bought and paid for.
Okay.
So we made this investment as part of our technology upgrade to the CPE. So there's no cost to Grand Traverse County.
So move.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Son?
As long as Jason's here, I read something in a note the other day about a possible discussion of taking over dispatching for Wexford County. Can you give us any insight of an update about that?
Shortly after that, sure. Shortly after that, I attended their board meeting, I think it was last week, which they then decided, after going back and forth and weighing all the options, that they wanted to try and keep it local. So they're going to establish their own department with their own department head and try and keep their 911 service in Wexford County, with the idea that they want to possibly explore in the future, coming back to Grand Traverse or Misiola, if it doesn't work out locally, to provide a contract of services.
No, we entered into discussions 10 years ago about a regional dispatch center that could cover multiple places. And, everybody gets down to push and shove, and it comes down to a little bit of a power play of everybody wanting to control what's going on, and you hear from people, Grand Traverse County dispatchers don't know where the roads are in Benzie County. Well, that's what GPS mapping is all about. It's just, but the fact is, with today's technology, we are at a point where we can talk about regional dispatching, if we quit playing these power trips about who's going to control it.
Well, just to add on to that real quick, state of Michigan had like 244 911 centers 10 years ago. We're down to 144. The consolidation efforts are there, and really it's the expenses behind the technology and is driving those forces to bring those communities together and work together and create more efficient centers that way.
I think Jason handled it well. When we talked, he made it clear that he left the door open down the road, that we don't think it's probably the best decision that they made, but we understand how those things can happen. But we do think that in time, per your points, they will be coming back and taking a look at it again.
Well, it just costs too much money. We look at what we've spent here in the last 10 years for upgrading. It's huge. We were fortunate, Jason went out and found some money, outside money, to help us with that. God knows we didn't have it in our general fund to make these upgrades. Between the surcharge and the voted millage and Jason finding grants, we've been able to develop a very, very upgraded system that the citizens of our community are very blessed to have. But, you know, there's a lot of communities in our surrounding areas that just are never going to get there.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks.
Welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to finance. Jody, with the pension stabilization trust? Or you want to take that, Tom?
Well, I will.
Okay.
This is simply asking for permission, because we don't want to expend funds unless we have board support, to set up a trust. It's outside of MERS. It would be based on Public Act 20, where we would only be allowed to invest in treasury bills and fixed assets, and it would be utilized for the stabilization of the amortization schedule. And when new actuarial studies came back and we were told we had to have another $500,000, it would go to that fund to be put in there to keep that $5.9 million consistent over the 16 years. It's simply that. And, you know, we didn't want to expend funds unless we had board approval before we went ahead with it. But this would give us the right to set up the trust.
Ask for a motion to approve the establishment of a pension stabilization trust.
Also move.
Support.
All those in, any discussion?
Just a little bit. I'm still a little concerned, you know, and God knows that I don't trust MERS as much as anyone in this room, maybe more. But the fact is that if we put the funds in a pension stabilization fund that are ours, it doesn't show up on our funded liabilities with MERS. You know, that's a concern that I have. You know, we've put together a plan with MERS at this point. We gave them an upfront program or payment. We're promised that our payment will be level for the next 16 years. You know, now whether or not they get the return on their money, so is at the end of the day we're all even. I don't believe for a heartbeat that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I'm concerned about creating another account that we're putting pension money into. You know, it almost sometimes looks like a shell game, and I hate to say that, but it looks like we're putting money in this pot because we don't want to give it to them, but ultimately, it's our responsibility to pay the money to MERS. And it doesn't show up on our pension percentage of deficit unless MERS in fact has the money.
Commissioner Follett had something.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not really in favor of setting up a separate trust, because I know how costly it would be to set that up. I know we would have to have people, you'd probably want to set up, you know, a group that would be in charge of overseeing it, that wouldn't be us, and I think that we can handle this through creating a line item in our budget that's where we're going to put funds that we're going to set aside. I think there's other ways to do it than incurring the cost, the hassle, the added layer of extra people that a trust would require, so I'm not going to support it.
Yes.
I support it, and actually you just helped build my case.
Well, there you go, my pleasure.
You're welcome. If it's a line item budget, that means this board can then change everything else. If it's in there, I think our hands will be off a little more, where future boards can't mess with. I kind of like the idea of having a lower risk item in there for stability, because you hit the nail on the head too, that we know the $5.6 million that we're going to pay a year is not going to cover it for some years it will, some years it won't. So I think that would give us a buffer in that area to help cover that. So.
Yes, Dan.
Plus, we have a law that allows us to do that and invest it. If we have a line item thing, we're not going to invest it anywhere. So
Sure we are.
I'm going to vote for this.
This was a culmination of a number of concerns, and Mr. Wheelock is right. MERS will not count this, but we know we have it identified for legacy cost reduction. And the reason that we did that, just to reiterate that, was that we were concerned about putting money in MERS because of the inconsistent track record. And that's why we added Public Act 20, which would restrict us to treasury bonds and fixed assets, which is a very conservative approach to protect your asset base. So you won't get as high a return, but you'll make sure you have the money there when you need it. So it's a very conservative approach. In fact, I will tell you, we found out today, the Los Angeles Times had an article about Glendale, the city of Glendale, that did the same thing. I don't think they copied ours, but it was nice to see that others are looking at ways of getting out of, say, CalPERS and getting out of MERS and stabilizing funds so that when they need them, they can put them in. So I think in terms of Commissioner Follett's concern, it's clearly identified that you do minimal investments, treasury bills and CDs. So you're not playing the market. You don't need a lot of staff time. You don't need a lot of time to do that. You're restricted under Public Act 20 is what you can do. So it's as simple as you can to stabilize your asset base so that when you need it, you can maintain that 5.9 16-year amortization schedule. So it's just,
Do you have a projected cost?
Pardon me?
Do you have a projected cost?
In terms of the setup, I don't know exactly. Do you know exactly what that is? The projected cost on what it would cost to set it up?
So we have been speaking with Miller Canfield's first when we engaged them to explore whether or not this was a viable option. I've had a number of conference calls with them about both OPEB trusts and then the Pension Stabilization Trust and its viability. I can't say what dollar amount for finalizing the trust agreement, but with regards to the concern of having an external board or needing additional staff to oversee the investments with the restrictions under Public Act 20, which would apply to this trust, they would have to be similarly invested as the other county assets and could even be overseen by the county treasurer, not to volunteer her for any additional work, but to waylay the concern of Commissioner Follett.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, we currently already invest monies in exactly what you're talking about investing these monies in.
No, I'm
You just
saying-
said that.
The treasurer does.
The treasurer must invest general fund dollars under Public Act 20, which restricts the types of investments.
Right.
She can place the assets.
Right.
But this trust, for instance, would, if she were acting as trustee, then although in a separate legal trust,
Yeah, I understand the
they could be
concept.
co-min.
But my
Yeah.
point is, if we had an extra $500,000 that we wanted to invest in treasury bonds, we could do it right now. We don't need a trust in order to do that, correct? Under Public Act 20?
If they were just part of the general fund
That's correct.
balance.
Yes, I'm saying we don't need a trust in order to invest the money. All that you're doing with a trust is saying, we don't trust future boards to handle the money properly. That's all you're accomplishing with this, bottom line.
And it's coming with a price tag.
And it's gonna come with a price tag.
And we don't have an idea what that cost is.
But it would be, I mean, legal fees being what they are, maybe a few $100s per hour for the development of the trust. I mean, we're not looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars to establish this trust. We're looking for the legal fees to prepare a document. But I would just like to offer that it's not necessarily even about trusting future boards, but also just preparing for the inevitable events where MERS will reduce or make more conservative assumptions for our actuarial valuations, where they extend the lives of our retirees or decide to lower the 7 3/4 return on investment. And ultimately, that will drive down our funding status and it will drive up our potential
So
required
the
contribution.
16 years fixed payment is going to fluctuate, in other words.
Yeah,
We all
it
know
could-
that.
it could
We
very
all
well.
know that. Well, that's what you're planning for. We all know that's going to happen.
Yeah,
All I'm suggesting is we could have a line item in our budget, and it's called the pension stabilization line item, and it wouldn't cost us a dime, correct? We could do that. That could be an option.
It could be an option.
Okay.
Yes,
When we get to our next meeting on August 2nd, we're going to be discussing pension debt, right? I think it's
I don't know if
planned
that's
to be on the
coming up on
agenda. Well, I'd just like to table this until we have that meeting, which is just a week from now, because I think it ties in with that discussion, pension debt, which is part of the August 2nd meeting. And, I was just fine with extending the amortization, and I'm just curious, have we sent that money to MERS that extends it? Is that transaction complete, or?
No, we have not. As the treasurer had indicated at the time that it was approved, we were postponing the transfer of any of those assets until we were in a different cash position with the receipt of our general fund property tax revenues.
Okay. Because I did think that step easily came first, to extend the amortization. But this step here, I'm not sure if it's necessary to do it tonight, and we could do it when we discuss pension debt on the first meeting of August.
Yes, Dan?
Did you say we already approved this?
We have not.
We haven't
We haven't
approved the
voted on
funds,
this
but
yet.
we approved the vehicle, right? Did we pass that?
No, I was
No.
speaking to the approval of the amortization extension agreement
The
and the
16
lump
years.
sum payment of
Oh, all right.
$5.6
Thank
million.
you.
So, Tom, what, if it was to go to the next meeting, is that, what's that gonna cause us any problems?
It won't change anything. What we do is we will not be setting up a trust, and there's no sense of acting on the second one, because that was geared to putting funds into the trust, so we could hold off on that, or we could put 13% into the trust already set up for the OPED to move some of the funds in. But, it doesn't, it's just, we just don't do it, is all. And then I guess I'm not sure what, it's real clear that you're going to have a recession sometime, and you're going to have changes in that amortization schedule. It simply is putting funds in, which we've all been concerned about the volatility of the markets, in a very conservative way so that you are protecting your principal. And when the next report from MERS comes and says you owe 6.4 this year, you've got a fund that's dedicated for that to put in that. Will it cost money to set it up? Yes, it's a one-time cost that isn't repeated, and it doesn't take much of management because Public Act 20 restricts what you can invest in. So I mean, you're the decision makers, whatever you do, but it's to me it's a no-brainer. But I will just do whatever the board decides to do. We will be happy to comply with.
Well, we do have a
Motion to
motion
table.
on the table, and
A motion to table is
Well-
what the motion, he moved to table the.
We have a
the mo-
motion on the floor to create it, don't we?
The motion to table comes first.
Sarah, do we have a motion?
There's no
Do we have a
second yet.
motion to move forward?
He made a motion to table, and Bob just said that
Comes
comes
first.
first, and I
Motion
will
to table
second that.
takes
I will second that motion, so we can vote on that.
okay. Is that a
Do we-
roll call
No.
vote, or,
No.
okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, to table?
Aye. All opposed?
No?
That takes us,
I guess I
So-
would
so then
feel
we're-
better.
so-
If we're going to discuss this at the August 2nd meeting, I'd feel better about a couple things. Number one, you mentioned the fact that you were in contact with Miller Canfield. I'd like to know, how much are we paying those people? Because we've heard that name come up several times, how much we're paying those. And then if we have any projected cost of what it's going to cost to actually create the trust.
Yeah. we can get that.
Our office could do that. I know that Chris has been talking to the attorney down at Miller Canfield about this, as someone that he was familiar with, and they're one of the few firms that have set up this type of trust, so maybe we can get an idea.
I know that the name keeps coming up, Miller, that we've talked to Miller Canfield. I'm assuming those people aren't giving us free advice, so we're probably paying something for it. I'd like to know what
I
we're paying
think we've
for
already
that,
paid
and
some money for their consultation.
and a projected cost of what it's going to cost to create the trust.
so then we're gonna move the item 2, appropriation of Whitewater.
The only, it certainly could do that. The other option would be, we do have a trust set up for the op-eds, and we were going to dedicate 13% of the proceeds to that. You could do that, or you could just hold off on that.
Or whether we do that tomorrow or whether we do it next
Yeah, do it
week is not
anytime.
going to be an
Do
issue.
it anytime, no.
You know, we have a meeting on August
Yeah.
2nd.
Could do it, you could do it
I
then as
think I
well.
have 3 meetings on August 2nd.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, could do it anytime.
All right, then.
So we'll table that one as well.
We'll move that, table that, and move it to
Okay. All right.
the next meeting. That takes us to deficit elimination plans, Lafreniere.
The
DPW.
Whitewater Township appropriation.
No, we're tabling that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, until next time. That's just, you're now at 3, right? So
Mhm.
That's putting into compliance with a new state law which says at 30 days completion of an audit, we have to file certain paperwork. And Jody, you might want to explain that from the finance perspective on the specifics of it.
Yeah, so actually, it's an old state law, but a new reporting requirement.
New reporting requirement, that's what I meant to say.
So whereas before we simply, as a function of our annual reporting to the state, needed to file a deficit elimination plan, they have changed the parameters for which funds require deficit elimination plans, what the tests are for determining if a deficit elimination plan is necessary, and then the requirement that the plan is certified by the board, or approved by the board and then certified by the state. So in this case, when applying the various tests that were outlined in the guidance provided by letter 2016-1, the first year that applied to was for our 12/31/2016 audit. We're required to submit deficit elimination plans for 3 funds. 2 of them are debt service funds. One of them is an internal service fund. So that's the Lafreniere DPW Debt Service Fund, the Woodmere Debt Service Fund, and the Motor Pool Internal Service Fund. All of these deficits were a result of internal financing activities. So in the cases of Lafreniere DPW and Woodmere, there was a refunding of bonds some number of years ago that created the deficit, or it was recorded on our books as a deficit in these debt service funds. And then every year that we make that payment kind of back to ourselves, it eliminates that deficit. With the internal service fund for the motor pool, it was the purchase of Motorola equipment. And then again, through annual appropriations, we're eliminating those deficits. So the memorandum that's attached to the action request item would have been a similar format to what would have otherwise been submitted to the state for their review. It outlines everything that I've just stated, as well as the timeline that the current amortization schedules will eliminate those deficits. And then the resolution has tables for each of those funds that follow the format that was recommended through the state guidance.
So this is an accounting thing.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's pure and simple. It's
Exactly,
an accounting numbers chasing thing. These debts have always been
It's
on
kind
the
of that
books.
shell
It's-
game that we talked about
There
earlier. Which
you
shell
go.
did you put the money under
Yep.
today?
We have to comply with it.
We financed it ourselves, and we're paying ourselves back for the money.
So move.
It's that simple.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we're on to the expansion of the EDC board.
EDC, yes. Gene?
So move.
I'll support. Go ahead.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Just for the public's idea, this is an expansion of the EDC board from 9 members to 11
Yeah.
to include representation from the city and the airport.
Yes.
Which we believe are key components to get economic development growth in Grand Traverse County.
That says it all.
That non-aeronautical use of that property that will be around Costco has a lot of potential. So it's nice to see that representation come on there. So.
That takes us to old business. You've gone a long time, Dan, you lost 2 votes. Old business,
That was
review of Parks and Rec action of June 8th to rescind Parks and Recreation's resolution number 03, 2016. I'd move to reverse the decision of the Grand Traverse County Parks and Rec Commission made at their June 8th, 2017 regular meeting to rescind the commission's previous resolution to allow the County Board of Commissioners to sell the Keystone Brimley property. Further, move to list the Keystone Brimley property for sale with Mike Street of Coldwell Bankers Schmidt, who serves as Grand Traverse County's real estate agent.
For the sake of discussion, I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I only signed that to bring it back so we could just talk about it. I wasn't thrilled when the Parks and Rec Board, and we talked about it at the last meeting, wasn't thrilled because I felt like there was some heartburn about, as we were talking about parks and other things, that probably led to that decision. Part of my goal to bring it back is actually what's happened tonight is to have discussions. I mean, you've had that property for quite so many years now, and no one's really done anything with it. You've had proposals and thoughts and everything else, so, I mean, I'd recommend to the Parks Board that you get a good 2-year plan together on it and figure out, if you're can't do something in 2 years, then bring it back to the county and sell it. There's no way that whoever offered us the money before is probably going to get into this circus at this point. I don't think so. And I don't want to get into the business of going against other boards, whether, sometimes if we agree or disagree with them, so.
Yes, Tom.
What happened to the potential buyer? Did they drop out?
I don't know.
What happens to them?
What happened to them? Did they drop out when all this happened?
This is one of those things that deals grow whiskers, and I think this has got some long whiskers. I think they've moved on. We could certainly always go back and recontact them to see if there's interest, because a lot took place in terms of easements and, getting everyone happy in terms of their needs, but I think it just took so long to do that they got discouraged. But it certainly never hurts to ask.
Yeah, so it's, they're pretty patient if they are still there. Pretty patient with us. I guess that idea of 2 years to come up with a plan, I'd like to see if there was any effort to make a plan that had come a lot faster than 2 years.
Yes, Cheryl.
Well, as a member, as your representative on the Parks and Recs Board, I guess I would share with you that, I think Parks and Rec is very interested in doing what they can to help the county with their debt issue, but I think they're also very interested in making sure that we don't seek short-term solutions to long-term problems. And the potential sale revenue from that parcel was not going to resolve our debt. And frankly, just in the short time I've been on that board, I've heard some really great ideas of what that property could become with the right partnerships. So I'm hopeful that we can get some interest stirred up to do some of the things that I've heard people want to do, like the indoor facilities for sports, because there's such a lack around here in the wintertime for recreation, or I guess Center Ice needs ice. They need more ice. I mean, there's some talk of some things that I think it would be great if we could use that. So.
Yes, Dean.
Commissioner Paulette, I think you voted for us to sell this property to start with. Am I wrong?
I did.
So what made you change your mind?
I didn't like what was happening to the price. It went down. I didn't think it was fairly priced in the first place, and then when the offer came in for what we were going to sell it for, it seemed way low to me.
Okay.
Yes, Sonny.
Well, the opportunity for us to acquire or retain property, or particularly to acquire property immediately adjacent to recreational property that we have already, is just not going to come around. The fact that we have this piece, over the years I've had opportunity to attend a whole lot of soccer events in indoor facilities all over the Midwest and
some of them all over the country. And there are some beautiful facilities that can be constructed inside. And many of them are operated by nonprofits. I remember when the ice skating ring was in a bubble. We may get to a point that we build a bubble and put in a grass turf field, if someone can come around and make it work like that. I know of a facility in Louisiana right now that's in a bubble that, they're going to be in a bubble about 5 years, and they figure they'll have the money to build a bricks and mortar facility. But they get the facility built, they get the people coming, and then they have a revenue stream to invest the money long term. There's some nonprofit groups, there's some groups of individuals that have been talking about this thing off and on for a long, long time. I know my wife and I talked about possibly building one on some of our property a long time ago. It was just a matter of, it was a lot of money, and whether or not that was the best use of our efforts at that time. But I think the potential use of this property by far outweighs $300,000 that we're going to get for it. And when you're talking about a $50 million deficit, $300,000 isn't worth, having much of a discussion over.
Yes, Bob.
The only thing that concerns me is, the pool was originally nonprofit, and look what it saddled us with. So I would encourage, if something is developed there, that make sure the language is there that if it folds, the county is not responsible for any upkeep or maintenance or running it, But I agree. The picture of you as a bubble boy. Impressive.
Yeah. Yes.
Klaus, may I just respond to Commissioner Johnson and assure you that we are in the process right now this year of redoing our recreational plan, our master plan for all of our parks. By the way, I'm Chris Erickson, Director of County Parks and Recreation. Sorry about that. So that will be addressed in that plan. It was addressed slightly, that piece of property at Burnley and Keystone before. And now T-Bay's lease with us is up, I think in 2020, March 2020. So we'll be talking with them and talking about that property and what's next door to it, and talking with the various groups that support us, including, Tart Trails and other folks that we have collaborations with on the overall plan. So I think that you will see a plan for it. I can't guarantee it's going to be a 1-year or 2-year plan. These are traditionally 5-year plans that we file with the MDNR so we can apply for grants. But I've heard you, and we will be discussing it at our commission.
Yes.
And I do know their business development team or committee does awesome work, so I have no doubt. I mean, I would think this would be a natural fit for T-Bays, because I know they need more room for all that they do over there. Because you can't go by that facility on the weekend. Every time I drive by there, I forget, hit myself on the head because of the traffic.
Yes, Dan.
In a way, it's like the point you brought up with the Sands area. There's this big piece of property right in the middle of, and why would we want to sell it to a private group? And this is kind of like that. There's a whole bank of, I can see why you'd want to, so.
Well, I went back and looked at all the comments from when it was first looked at for sale. 1994 is when we purchased it. And I think about 28 or 30 people turned out for the public meeting, the public hearing about it. And they talked about the observatory and not having anything there that's too light, that it would be a natural fit for development for future recreation, if that were the case, but it originally was not purchased for that. And then it was turned over to the Parks Board to make a plan for it, and a plan was made, but then there wasn't funding for the plan. So you're right, we've gone back and forth with so many scenarios. Maybe this has gotten the public's attention, and that's why when we were discussing it, when the commission rescinded their resolution for it, people started coming out of the woodwork again to talk about it. So maybe that's the positive in all of this.
There was very heavy discussion 10 years ago about building 6 baseball diamonds there.
Yes.
And there was plans and drawings and everything produced for that. And at that point, Traverse City Little League was really up and strong. The beach bums had just come to town. The number of kids that were involved in baseball went from down here to up here, in a matter of overnight when the beach bums came to town. And all of a sudden, baseball was the big thing. And there was a group of people that were absolutely adamant we needed more baseball diamonds. We've managed to get by without them. Whether or not we need more baseball diamonds, that's a whole nother discussion. But the fact is that, we certainly have potential use for that building, or that property. And if nothing else, I would really, truly like to have discussion with the road commission about what we can do to provide a secondary access to that Keystone property. Because we know we can't get another railroad crossing across the railroad. We've tried and tried and tried, and we don't really like the one that we've got, but
It's right there.
that's where it is, I know. And Jim and I have had this conversation before, but the bottom line is, that facility, when there are 8,000 kids here playing soccer for the autumn solstice tournament, and you're trying to get down Keystone Road, and they're trying to get out, and the people that are ready for coming in for the next games are trying to get in, it is unbearable to try to get in and out of there. So we really, if there was any way to find a secondary access to that property without crossing the railroad tracks, because we all know MDOT's not going to let us go across that railroad track.
Yes, Bob?
We were given the charter to bring up possible properties for sale. This was one of them, and I wished I'd have never even brought it up.
Sorry.
Well, no, it really, I mean, that was part of my reason to bring it back here, was to get that discussion going, to say, look, we got to do something with this. I do have it on good authority that the Legion baseball would look real in-depth if you decide to build fields over there for rent, so.
Nice.
I think Chris makes a good point, though. I've heard of plans for this for 10 years, and I do think it's a great location for the recreation if people want it. But I think they need to know, if it's another 10 years go by and they don't do anything, then maybe it should be used for something else. But maybe this is the incentive, per Chris's point.
I think the question is that the people want it. It's a matter of how are we going to pay for it.
Yeah, how you fund it.
I think everyone would like to see more
Sure.
recreational development there.
I think you're right.
It's a matter of how are we going
How
to
we
pay for it.
Absolutely.
It's a stupid question, but if you put a baseball diamond there, you gotta light it for the night games, right?
No, you don't have lights now at.
Oh, they don't?
Yes, they do.
So
Yes,
don't
we
have
do.
to
At
worry
Civic
about that.
Center.
Everything is civic.
Observatory then.
Oh, I'm
Maybe next
thinking of
year.
I'm thinking of our double A field,
You
never
just
mind.
deal with Jerry can talk about it, we can talk
Down
about what
lights.
type of lighting we
Down
put in, and also put a cap on the time that the games can be done.
Yeah.
I was in a really nice art van facility in Grand Rapids last week, baseball facility, but, everything's done and out of there by 8:30 at night, 9
So
o'clock at the
Are you
latest.
amenable with that? I mean, do you think ball diamond would be okay there?
That was talked about
Yeah.
after the septic treatment plant, which was talked about the baseball diamonds in there.
You can still see the stars, right? You can still see the stars.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, it had lights for baseball. If you had lights, you could put time on the games, and by 9 p.m.
Okay.
There's really no lights for the soccer field, other than just
Cool.
With the proper lighting and the proper restrictions, you will not interfere with the observatory, with pretty much any kind of a recreational facility that you build there.
Thank you very much.
Couple comments I want to make is, Sonny made a comment there that, we're going to get $300,000 out of this if we sell it, and that ain't nothing compared to our debt. If we go at that, if we use that there mentality with our debt, we're never going to see it down. So we can't use that as a reason. And then second, if there's going to be any building going on that piece of property of any size, it's going to require water. There's no water main down that. So in the next 2 years, unless DPW or some developer, which is the only way water service gets extended is by a developer putting something in place to attract enough value to the land to bring water in. That's not going to happen there. So any big indoor facility's not going to happen, in my estimation. Any public want to comment on this? Okay. We've got, should we do, yes?
I just wanted to say one last thing, if you don't mind. Thank you for indulging me. I had a gentleman phone me today. I missed the very beginning of public comment. He said he wanted to try and get here, but I'm not sure if he is. So whether he said something about it or not, sorry to repeat. He said that many years ago, maybe like 10, 12 years ago, there was topsoil taken off of that property, and we received money for that. And he seems to feel that might be an option again. And I've already talked with Mr. Menzel about this, and I know I feel confident on behalf of the Parks Board, and some of you are here, so correct me if I'm wrong. We are looking to still help with, the Parks Board is still looking to help with the budgetary issues at the county level, and we're always looking for a win-win, so we definitely will consider options to share some funding if the price were right and things like that. And that's what rang in my head today when he spoke with me about it. I thought, well, maybe that's something, where parks could help and pitch in. So I know that our Parks Board has never said it's been opposed to helping at all. This was just a unique incident, and it came about because of our strategic planning. So, and the desire to bring recreation to the community and continue to do that as best as we can. But I think there could be creative options, and in Parks and Rec, we're pretty creative, and we're always looking for the win-win-win. So I just wanted to let you know, we definitely will continue to look at things as we're able to.
Thank you. So let's do a roll call.
And the motion is to reverse their decision and relist the property.
Correct.
That's right.
Wheelock.
No.
Gorflat.
No.
Mayor.
No.
Lathrop.
No.
Johnson.
No.
Klaus.
Yes. So that takes us through that hurdle, and we're going to be, I think that takes us to new business. We added Eric Tungate for discussion. I guess I'll start it because I sent the paperwork off this week to the commissioners, and the one item that I'll bring up is when Mr. Tungate had mentioned the pension obligations, the percentage that they were funded. He had said that they were 61, 62% funded, and when in fact their paperwork at the city on their website shows that they're 42, 43% funded. And then Eric sent us back the valuation summary that is in July 1st of 2015 and July 1st of 2016. I don't know how to make sense of that when the website, which calls for 2016 and 17, that would be the year end. And I'm assuming if it's on the website, would that be their year end, Jody, of their valuations?
I can't speak to that. I haven't looked at their website or what would be listed, but I could speak conceptually to how perhaps he arrived at that number.
On their website, they've got 2014, 2015, 2016 with percentages of their liabilities listed. I'm just assuming that is at the end of the year. I may be wrong.
So the excerpts that I believe were in the Record Eagle attachment to the article looked like they were perhaps the excerpts from the audited financial statements.
Okay. Which is this, is that,
From here, it looks like a Riemann audited financial statement.
okay,
Yes.
all right. So
And that, I believe, says CBIZ in the corner, so
It
that would
does.
have been
Yes.
a valuation report.
So if this is from the audit firm,
So I can tell you how I would have done it.
okay?
So if I were interviewing and my board had recently made a contribution, a one-time contribution, let's say of $5.6 million, to the unfunded pension liability of, in this case, the county, I may take my 45% funded status and say, okay, well, if 45% funded was calculated based off of my total net assets divided by my total liability, I would add the 5.6 million to my total assets, divide it by that same liability, and I would have increased my funding percentage. And so if I were then to speak to, I don't know what that number is because I haven't done it, that would be useful to know. But if I were to then say, well, that immediately moved us from 45% funded to 48% funded, it wouldn't be reflected in the audited financial statements, but my math would have been, in theory, that way.
Thank you.
I don't know how you try to figure out what it was he was saying and what numbers. You know, we have two pension programs here. We have a defined benefit program that's 48% funded. We have a defined contribution program that's 100% funded. If I take the two of them together, my overall pension funding isn't so bad. You know, the vast majority of our current employees and some of our retired employees are on defined contribution programs, and they're 100% funded.
So the point is, Ron, what is your concern with that issue? That he misstated the number?
Yes, that he is claiming to be 61, 62% funded when,
Okay.
in fact, they're
Okay.
43 by the audit firms.
And would that knowledge of that mistake and his recollection of their funding, is that sufficient to change your opinion on whether or not he should be offered employment?
I don't know what
I'm
else
trying to
could be
figure
out.
out, I'm trying to figure out what the relevance is. I'm just trying to
Well-
see where we're going with this.
On his explanation, and on his explanation that he sent to us that Carol, go ahead.
I've misstated ours, and we're knee-deep in, or this deep in it, and I mean...
Knees?
Yeah, knees.
I'd
It'd be
love to
nice if
be
you only be
knees,
knee-deep.
yes.
But I can't remember exactly if we're at 47 or 52 or whatever. You know, the poor guy's gonna run away now, I think, and if that happens, I'd hate to see what the pool of candidates would look like afterwards, because you'd really have to wonder, why would someone jump into this? Because I wondered that before.
Right.
And now I would really start to question, why would someone come into this circus? I love using the word circus apparently tonight.
Yes, you are.
You know, to me, that, you know, the
nose?
Yeah, it could be the nose, the big feet, I don't know. But to me, it didn't cause enough concern. You know, I really thought the allegations of whatever he was charged with on the acquittal was really way out of bounds.
Yeah.
You know, anybody can make allegations and can go to court or whatever, and, you know, if it's acquitted, it's acquitted. Remember, OJ was acquitted, you know.
Well, I don't
so-
like that
I
analogy.
know, that's probably not a good analogy.
Not a good analogy, no.
You should shut up now then. so.
He was not.
Dan's got a comment.
Is
Dan's
there,
got a comment. Dan's got a comment.
Dan, go ahead.
I kind of feel the opposite on that. Had we known about that, I think I would have looked at him a little differently. Not saying it would have changed my mind, but I would have asked different questions. And I'm just surprised that it didn't come to our knowledge, that it was something that we weren't informed about. That disappointed me.
Cheryl.
And I would affirm your statement, and I would tell you that I believe that the fault lies with our search firm. We hired our search firm to vet our candidates, and our search firm substituted its judgment for our judgment by deciding that we should not be told of that. I do not believe that Eric had a responsibility to share that with us in a public meeting. If you apply for a job anywhere in the world and you look at the application, it says, have you been convicted of any misdemeanors or felonies? It does not say, have you ever been charged with a misdemeanor or a felony? He had no duty to report that. He didn't even have a duty to report it to James, but he did, because he knew that somebody somewhere would Google it and send it to somebody who would then, and then we would be where we are. I personally am ashamed for us that made it to the front page of the paper. I would like to apologize to him. I feel terrible. I feel terrible that this man who went through the criminal justice system was found not guilty by a jury of his peers has been slashed across the front page of our newspaper and called a potential felon for something that he didn't do. It's awful. It's just awful.
I'm sorry I went there too. His response to the newspaper that we shouldn't be looking at his private life. Keep in mind, I'm not taking sides on this yet. I'm just discussing it, okay? We had in the city a city manager just a couple years ago whose private life affected the city quite a bit. And you remember that?
Mm-mm. Yeah, but was that good for the community?
No, I'm just saying that.
The point about this is when, and God knows I haven't read the Record Eagle in 15 years, and there's a reason. But the bottom line is, does this make a difference of whether or not he can do the job? We interviewed him, we asked him the questions, we asked each one of us individually asked questions, and we got the responses. Now, we all knew who was coming in to interview. If we were concerned that he was going to talk about a pension debt that wasn't real, maybe we should have checked that out before the interview, and we could have asked him about that. I believe we got reasonably honest answers to the questions that we asked. And we asked some tough questions. But the bottom line is, I don't care what candidate you bring in here from one side of the country to the other, if you want to start going back after the fact and say, well, we should have asked him this, I'm sure that there's not going to be one candidate that's going to come in the door that we probably shouldn't have asked something else. But the fact is, we had good questions. We asked all of the candidates the same questions. Each commissioner had an opportunity to ask individual questions that they had in mind, and each one of us did, and I think we got good answers. Coming out of that, we had a minimal amount of discussion and voted unanimously to offer this man a position. I think we should, if we're going to do anything here tonight, we should reaffirm that decision.
Cheryl.
I think that the expectation that we would fly-spec someone's history, in 1984, you voted to do blah, blah, blah. Or I see in 1996 that your tax return was audited. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair.
Welcome to the Google world.
I'm just saying. Yeah, okay. I was arrested for minor in possession when I was 17 years old. I feel I must come clean before someone Googles it and reveals it. And this is the true story, okay? This is the truth. I'm telling the truth. 17 years old, minor in possession, my one and only walk of shame in the criminal justice system, okay? But the point is, someone could find that out about me, and then they could say, how come you never revealed your criminal history? Here we have it. again, I hope that Eric is listening. I hope that Eric is still interested in us. I hope that this doesn't turn Eric away from us, because I think he would do a good job for us. And I like the idea of reaffirming our support for him and letting him know that.
Okay. But let's let the public speak.
Absolutely.
Yes, step up.
I won't.
Gordy LaPointe, 6375 Plum Drive, Acme Township. I'd like to make a couple of comments about the process by which he was selected versus the candidate, more so than the candidate. In a nutshell, after meeting the candidate for the first time in a single-hour interview, where each commissioner, in my opinion, asked pretty much softball questions when you're hiring an executive, you made a decision to hire this person. I mean, this is a high-level chief executive of the county, and after a one-hour interview, you decide to hire the person. I've worked in the private sector for more years than I care to think about, been involved in a lot of hiring situations, been advising a lot of people in hiring situations. Never have we ever hired anybody after 1 hour of an interview. I mean, it was shocking. There was no follow-up scheduled with an HR professional, as far as I know. You met with him, he talked, he gave you a song and dance and a story, and in 1 hour you made a decision to go with him. No other professional interviewed him that had training in doing an interview process. There was no follow-up interview. I would have thought at a level like this you would have had perhaps the prosecuting attorney interview him to get some insight and give you some feedback on that, perhaps the treasurer. I was absolutely gobsmacked with the process by which you went on this. And there would have been a ton of good questions you should have asked him. I think would have really been relevant. For example, what was the most significant and difficult cost-cutting measure you had to implement as a manager? That would have been really interesting to hear what he had to do as a manager. How about what was the most significant and difficult personnel issue you had to deal with as a manager, and how did you do it? That would have been really insightful and interesting. I was amazed at the questions that were asked and how little time you spent on this. Here's the big one. I think that's the issue with this candidate, my opinion. And after interviewing people, this is the first thing I look at is their resume. Where did they work? How long did they stay? He's worked for the past 17 years. He has 8 different jobs. He stays about 2 years. The longest place he's stayed has been Oak Park. And after about 18 months or 2 years, he was out interviewing for another job. So as a hiring somebody, you always want to know what's their commitment going to be. How interested are they really in staying here, or is it just a means of acquiring another position to further their resume and move on? So that would have been something I would have thought you would have really honed in on. Have them explain to me why you've moved from job to job to job to job. And if you'll give me indulge me just one more minute. And finally on that, personally, now I'm speaking, and you've heard me speak before, and I'm tax adverse. I'm really concerned with taxes. Personally, I'm concerned about the next administrator coming from a governmental environment in southeastern Michigan, where the solution to most of their problems is solved through more spending and more taxes. Oak Park, I'm sure you know this, the way Oak Park addressed their unfunded liability was they passed a 7 mil tax for a 7-year period. That ain't going to fly here. And just looking at Oak Park, for example, you know what their millage rate is? 64.5 mils. TC, as a comparison, is 36 mils. So I'm really disappointed in the process you went through, to be honest with you. And I would think there should have been some real key questions addressed to this candidate. He may be the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know, but that didn't come out in the meeting other than the fact he was extremely personable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any more board? discussion?
No, I mean, just nowadays, it's a mobile society. People don't stay, quite frankly, at jobs very long. I don't want an administrator that's here more than 3 or 4 years personally. I don't want someone to get comfortable here into old habits. So for me, I'd rather see somebody go in a few years if they need, 2, 3, 4 years.
Like you.
Yes. Done in, before you know it.
Okay, so, sir,
Yes, Cheryl.
I would like to make a motion that we, as a board, such as we are, reconfirm our commitment to our offer to Mr. Tungate and make sure that we convey that to him.
Have we made him an offer? I mean, has there been
There's been a contract offered to him. It's being negotiated, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will support that motion.
The resolution was for Human Resources and our office and Carol Crawford, the chair, to negotiate a contract with
Okay,
Mr.
and they've done that?
We haven't yet. We're supposed to have a conference call tomorrow.
He's been
Okay.
provided a contract to peruse, it's my understanding, and the discussion will be tomorrow.
Yeah, he's been provided, as I understand it, we've reviewed his current contract, and he has contracts of past administrators.
Okay.
So I think the motion to reaffirm our commitment to at least make an offer or try to enter into a contract with this gentleman is appropriate, especially, based on the news media coverage of late and the discussion here this evening. I really do. I believe this is a good candidate for us. I believe it'll, and obviously every commissioner must have felt so last week, because that was a unanimous decision very, very quickly, that this was a good choice for us. I still think it's a good choice for us. So, I will support the motion to reaffirm our offer to him.
Any other discussion? I'll say that with our, with what we have talked about tonight and what we've mentioned, and I'll use the Parks and Recs Board as an example with that piece of property. We all approved to sell it at one point. Now tonight, we only had one guy that wanted to sell it, and it'll probably go the same way on this here candidate. So roll call vote, please.
Gorflat?
Yes.
Mayor?
No.
Lathrop?
No, I'm confused. Are we voting
Voting to reaffirm the offer.
to reaffirm the offer? And you voted?
I voted yes.
You voted no.
I voted yes.
Tom?
You voted yes.
I did vote yes.
And you voted no? My hearing's so bad, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man. It's a tough one. I'm going to vote yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Klaus?
No. That takes us, must be it,
God willing, that's it.
the end of the meeting. Darn
Second
it.
public comment.
Last public comment, yes. Yes, go ahead. Okay.
Just a couple things. On the pavilions was brought up tonight, and I didn't come prepared to speak about that, but I think there was a comment about Medicaid beds get somewhat significantly less in terms of what the charge is. At the pavilions, a private nursing home bed is $290 a day. A Medicaid bed is about $270, $276. So it's a wash. The other point I'd like to make is Commissioner Klaus mentioned that non-residents have availed themselves of pavilions at the same exact rate as Grand Traverse County residents. We get no preference on the waiting list whatsoever. And that's been followed up several times. Commissioner Sonny Walick has said, but it doesn't cost the county anything. No money comes out of the general fund. I'd like to remind you, the taxpayers paid for that. There was a 20-year millage, which I was paying taxes all 20 years, that funded that building. So Grand Traverse County residents, property owners, funded that facility, and we get no preference in it, and which is contrary to kind of what the county has looked at in the past when we're providing services to other counties, like the Veterans was a good example. They know how many people are there. We ask for some monies back from the other counties. So this has been kicked around for some time, but just a reminder, we all paid for that facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? That takes us to Commissioner Department reports. Any reports? Notices, next regular meeting will be held on August 2nd, and joint meeting on August 2nd at 4:30, the IT strategy presentation. No closed sessions?
Nope. And the Building Authority interviews subcommittee will be at 4 o'clock next Wednesday.
Better hurry with that. 4:30, you'll be late.
Well, I have it on my calendar, 4:30, 5:30.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
Okay.
Hallelujah.